gets old.
Hey, welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for tonight. It is June 5th, 2025 with Missy Mikulecky. Missy is the Giants archivist. She's going to be talking about the what she does with the San Francisco archives and the New York Giants archives. Uh, just one thing I need to say tonight. Our meeting for next Thursday has been changed to this coming Monday. That's with John Hussman, who's going to be talking about Roger Bresnahan. The reason we're moving, and you all need to root, is that John is he's a historian for the Toledo Mudhens, but he's also a big fan of the Toledo Walleye, and they're in the one of the minor league, basically the Stanley Cup, and they're trailing 2-1. They need to win, and he needs to go to games 6 and 7, which will be in Toledo. So John is going to come on Monday. Hopefully, he will not be depressed, and he'll be in a good mood, and that the game 6 and 7 will take place, especially game 7 only if it's necessary. So again, I will send out that announcement, but our next meeting will be on Monday, and then the following week we have we will be remembering Willie Mays, A Celebration of Life, with Shayna Dom from the Giants as well. So we did it on June 18th because that would have been that's when Willie passed away. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to Missy. Missy, welcome to the New York Giants Preservation Society. Let's all give it up for Missy. Missy, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Gary. And before anything else, I just want to sort of, thank you for the invitation to speak to this group. That's
Of course.
really awesome of you. So thank you. So I'm Missy Mikulecky, and it's great to be here with you today. I'm the director of archives for the Giants, and I've been lucky to be with the team since 1994. And to be honest with you, I'm a little intimidated by the great folks you've been listening to for the past month. So they're all really hard acts to follow, but I'll do my best here.
I'm sure you'll be wonderful.
Okay.
And
Well,
you're right
thank
up
you.
there, and you're right up there with them. And we had our May, the month of Mays, and now we're gonna delve into some other things. Never forget Willie; he'll be on some other Zooms, but this one I think will catch the eye of all those in attendance.
Yeah. I hope I do you proud.
I'm sure you will.
And I know that everybody here knows a lot about Giants history, so I really wanted to dive into some of the lesser known moments behind some of the pieces we have in our collection. Each one tells a story, and some of those stories are really lighthearted, and some will tug at the heartstrings. But all of them speak to the deep and proud legacy of the New York and San Francisco Giants. And then Gary wanted to make sure we saved a few moments at the end for question and answer. So we'll do that too. And if you just let's see, I'm just gonna start sharing my screen now.
Or let me let you
Can you
do
give me?
that.
Okay.
Hold on a second. That's not it.
Give me the power, Gary.
Tech support.
Hold on. Post tools, is it? Share screen. There it is. Missy, you should have it now.
Okay. Let's see.
Hi, Russ. How are you? Missy did show up there. There you go.
Okay, cool. Let's see. I think I'll turn off my video just to save on bandwidth here. That definitely can't hurt. Okay. There you go. Okay. So before we sort of dive into the full journey today, I just wanted to briefly touch on someone I know that you've all been thinking about, which is Willie Mays, obviously. And this is the letter he wrote to the general manager of the Mets, who's Bob Scheffling, letting him know he was ready to retire. It's short, it's quiet, and it feels exactly like him. Just really sort of steady, grounded, and kind. It's really, I guess you'd say, just an official goodbye, just honest and to the point, which is, as we all know, Willie Mays. And it came to our collection through the Feeney family, which I'll talk about a little bit in a few minutes. Now, if it's all right with everybody, I'd love to take us a little further back in time to actually a different piece of paper and the earliest chapter of Giants history.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so this is just a letter. I mean, not the sexiest thing in our collection. It's got some 1880s legal mumbo jumbo on it, but buried in it is one line that I love. And it basically says, "We promise to show up." And that's it. That was New York's way back into baseball after being kicked out for ghosting a road trip. But really, that one promise is where our entire story starts, and we call it our creation letter. It may not look like much, but it played a big role in shaping not just the Giants, but the direction of the sport itself. Now, I know all of you obviously have followed the Giants for a while, so you know we've always had a sense of duty just to do things the right way, and that all starts here. To understand why, we really sort of need to go back to 1876. New York had a team in the National League called the Mutuals, but things weren't going too well. They, along with the Philadelphia Athletics, didn't even finish their 1876 seasons. Instead, they both decided to skip their final road trips. And at this point, I just can't even imagine a team just not showing up, but that's what they both did. And for a league that was trying to be taken seriously, that was a big deal. They wanted structure, reliability, but above all else, professionalism. So the National League came down hard. They banned both teams and cities from the league. And it was a lifetime ban. So starting in 1877, New York and Philadelphia, the biggest cities in the country, were locked out of National League Baseball. But a few years later, in 1882, things changed. William Hulbert, the league who'd enforced the ban, passed away. And with him, the lifetime part of that ban started to lose its grip. In practical terms, really the other owners just wanted New York and Philadelphia back in the league because the cities were just too big and important to ignore. And that's where our original owner, John Day, comes in. He wasn't a player, he was a businessman, and he was a smart one. He saw the door crack open and he stepped right on through. And by December of 1882, he had secured a spot in the league for a brand new club. And that team would eventually become our Giants. Which brings us to this letter. It was written as part of the team's formal acceptance into the league. And what makes it special, and why we still talk about it, is what John Day promised in it. He didn't just fill out a form, he made a commitment, one that still echoes today. And for me, the key line is right here. Hereby guarantees any and all engagements that may be made. Now, that may sound formal. I mean, it is 1880s legal speak. But what he really was saying was, my team will be there. We'll show up. We'll play every game. And in essence, we'll do it the right way. And over the years, these ideas of showing up, honoring the schedule, and playing with purpose has never left us. It wasn't just paperwork, it was a pledge. It was a real sort of message that his team in the biggest city in America was serious about the game. Guarantees any and all engagements. That's not just a promise that we made to the league. It's a promise we made to our fans, to our city, and to baseball. And that simple line, that commitment, that's the first real step in the long story of our Giants. And here they are, the very first Giants. This is the 1883 team that Day put together. Some of the players had been around the game, others were just starting out, but together they brought National League Baseball back to New York. And I love this photo. I love the uniforms. I love the way they're posed. Some are sitting, some of them are standing in the background and everything. And I think my favorite part is just the mustaches. They weren't just here to play a season. Instead, they were laying the foundation for something that would last for generations. The Giants were here, and we were here to stay. This is the moment National League Baseball returned to New York, and it all started with these guys over 125 years ago. And while New York was coming back into the league, so were the Athletics. While they were finding their new path, we were also starting ours with a brand new team and a clean slate. But back then, we knew what kind of club we wanted to be. We wanted to be one that showed up for every game and one that takes this game and that promise seriously. Now, if you don't mind, we can switch for something. It was official to something a little bit more personal and maybe even a little surprising. It's a bracelet. Yes, it's a bracelet. Not the first thing you think of when you picture a baseball artifact, but this one holds over 100 years of Giants history. It all started in 1919 when the Giants created a special gift for their most loyal supporters, season passes that could be used as watch fobs. Ah. Now, I know many of you already know about these, and most of you probably have a few in your collection. These are small medallions engraved with the recipient's name, and they were passes to the games at the Polo Grounds. Almost every year from 1919 to 1931, a new pin and a new design was unveiled. Imagine collecting those at the time, just season after season, and that's where this story begins. So there we go. Okay, sorry about that. You might wonder how a simple bracelet ties into the broader history of the Giants. So let's take a look at the family behind that jewelry. It starts with Charles Stoneham, who brought the team in 1919. He and his wife.
Missy, you have something in the background, I think.
Okay,
There we go.
sounds good. Okay, he and his wife, Alice Rafter, had a daughter named Mary.
There's an echo there.
Gary, somebody has their telephone on at the same time they're looking at their computer.
Okay, please turn off your. Thank you, Rick. If anybody has their phone on, please turn it off so that we don't have that echo. Thank you.
And I'm even moving my phone further away just in case. The fobs that we saw in the bracelet, those were given to Mary. And she saved every single one of them. Years later, those medallions were turned into a bracelet, a rare piece of wearable baseball history. Mary's son was Chub Feeney, a Giants VP and eventual National League president, whose youngest daughter eventually owned the bracelet, and her name was Katie. So this bracelet didn't just pass through a family, it passed through the Giants family, who didn't just watch baseball history, but they helped shape it. Now, if you'll just indulge me for just a moment, this one doesn't have much to do with baseball. This is Alice Rafter. She was one of Charles Stoneham's wives and Mary's mother. Now, Alice passed away before Charles bought the team, so she wasn't around during the baseball years, but I absolutely love this photo. I love the way she's dressed, her style and her posture. It just says a lot about the time she lived in and is so classically the Gilded Age. While Alice never saw a Giants game managed by John McGraw, her daughter Mary did. And as I mentioned, she saved those fobs. And that's where this bracelet really starts. So even though Alice wasn't a part of the team's history, she's a part of the story and a part of the family that helped shape the Giants. And thank you for that indulgence. And let's go back to baseball a little bit here. Eventually, Mary's bracelet made its way down to her granddaughter, Katie. And Katie spent her entire life in the game. She started helping her dad, Chub, in the National League office during the summer of 1977. It was just a summer job at first, but like a lot of things in baseball, it grew into something bigger. She stayed in baseball nearly 40 years and eventually became Major League Baseball's senior vice president of club relations and scheduling. If you watched a World Series or All-Star game in the 90s or 2000s.
Gary Vince's meetings.
Sorry.
Can't argue with that. So Katie was usually off to the side of the podium during the All-Star and World Series games in the 90s and 2000s. She probably had on one of her great hats and she was almost always wearing her bracelet. And after Katie passed away in 2017, the bracelet made its way to the Giants through the Feeney family. It wasn't just a keepsake, it was a real sort of tangible connection to her family and the game. And now her story keeps going through the Katie Feeney Memorial Scholarship at the University of San Francisco. Yes, USF. Okay. This scholarship works to help women get their start in sports. And there's also the Katie Feeney Leadership Award, which is given every year to one outstanding woman working in each of Major League Baseball's teams' front offices. So yes, it's just a bracelet, but there's a lot of Giants wrapped up in it. And now that we've talked about a family behind the scenes, let's shift gears a little bit and look at the quiet but remarkable story of a Giants ball player. For this one, I really wanted to challenge myself with the next piece and highlight someone today you may not have heard of, which isn't easy, I know, with this group. But baseball isn't just about the big contract guys. It's also about the ones who maybe had only a moment on the field, but whose love for the game never ended. And to help tell a story, I'd like to show you two pieces of paper again. One is a ticket from the 1922 World Series, the year Clint Bloom made his Giants debut. And the other is a press release from an old timers day at the Polo Grounds in 1963, where Clint suited up one more time for the National League. From the very beginning of his career till nearly the end of his life, Clint Bloom found a way to stay connected to the game he loved. He pitched a total of 13 major league games, all of them for the Giants. It was 1 in 22 and then 12 more in 23. So he wasn't a star. And funny enough, the year he pitched the most, he wasn't even on the World Series roster. But that one game on September 30th, 1922, he won it. The Giants beat the Braves 5-3. He gave up some hits, but only one earned run. He struck out 2, walked 1, and he got on base 3 times. He had a single, 2 walks, and he even scored a run. So it's not bad for your first and only shot at the season. Now, I know what you might be thinking. He didn't pitch in the series. And it's true, he didn't. But he was on the roster. And that brings me to this great ticket. It's not really his, right? But in a way, it is. It's from his time in the major leagues. It's the moment he got to stand in the dugout and be part of something bigger than himself. This ticket's not just about the series itself. Like so much in baseball, it's about the people around it. He pitched a dozen more games the next year, and then that was it. That was his whole big league career. But Clint's baseball career was just one chapter in his life. In fact, it was relegated to the 7th paragraph in his New York Times obituary. And the next chapters lead us into a world you might not expect. So this is where things really kind of get interesting for Clint. Because he didn't just disappear after he hung up his spikes. He went into real estate. Not just the sell a few kind of houses kind of real estate. We're talking about Rockefeller Center real estate. Yeah, he was one of the people who helped to acquire the land that Rockefeller Center sits on. And that's about 300 separate pieces that needed to be purchased and pieced together to create the space we now know and love. They used to call him the broker's broker. And that's not a nickname you just get handed to you. That's when everyone in the room trusts you. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 deals. Clint became one of the most respected figures in the entire industry. And as you can see, his list of accomplishments is unreal. He was on city commissions, nonprofit boards, hospitality groups, and he even worked with the UN. And even then, his story doesn't end there. He actually won the grand prize in the National Ripley's Believe It or Not contest. You see, back in 1918, when he was in the Army, a U-boat sank his transport ship about 500 miles off the coast of France. When that happened, he lost his scrub brush. It was just a simple brush with CWB written on it. And for anyone else, that would have been the end of it. But a year later, it washed ashore at his feet in Brooklyn. I mean, you can't make stuff like that up. And in order to win the award, the Ripley's Believe It or Not award, he had to beat out 1.5 million entries because, of course, he did. I mean, he's Clint Bloom, and that's what he does. But through everything, the skyscrapers, the committees, the scrub brushes, baseball was always there. He also served on the New York Baseball Committee, and that's the group that helped bring National League Baseball back to New York after the Giants and Mets had moved to California. That's not a small thing. He was someone who cared. For his work on the committee, he received the New York City Medal, specifically for helping preserve sports in the city. It's easy to think that once you're out of the game, that's it. But Clint didn't see it that way. He stayed involved and he kept showing up, just in a different uniform. So yeah, I mean, maybe he only pitched 13 games, but that's not where his baseball story ended. Because 40 years later, there he was, back at the Polo Grounds for Old Timers Day in '63. From the Giants World Series ticket in '22 to an Old Timers Day in '63 staged by the Mets, you can trace his whole baseball journey. His first game was in New York, and so was his last. In the same city, even in the same ballpark. And in between, he helped shape the skyline he once pitched beneath. Clint was born in Brooklyn, played baseball and worked in Manhattan, and died on Long Island. He was a New Yorker in every sense of the word. So here's a few more people with a lot of baseball connected to them, but their names are a little bit more well-known, Jackie Robinson and Bobby Thompson. Two very different players with two very different stories, but they both show up here for the same reason, because sometimes the Giants story takes a turn in the most unexpected places. Now, you all know about Jackie's connection to the Giants, and if there's anyone here who doesn't, well, you're about to. It's one of those almost stories, a moment where history brushed up against something that could have been. And Bobby gave us a moment that still echoes. And yes, they're both tied to the Dodgers because baseball history is fun like that. So one story is about what never happened. The other is about a moment that couldn't have been written any better. And somehow, luckily, they both became part of our story. So let's start with a moment that could have rewritten Giants and baseball history. Here's something that might be a little unexpected. It's one of the most interesting Dodger-related pieces in our collection, and it's on loan from the Feeney family. This is the contract the Giants prepared for Jackie Robinson after the 1956 season, and the Dodgers had just traded him to us. But here's the thing. No one, including the Dodgers, knew that he was planning on retiring before the ~57 season. He decided it was time to move on, and he'd taken a job as vice president at Chock-full of Nuts, which was a major Black-owned business at the time. If you look on the left, that's the front page of the contract, with his name just below the Giants. And on the right is a blank space waiting for his signature, which pretty much tells you everything. This moment could have rewritten the rivalry. I mean, Jackie in orange and black, imagine the ripple effect. But instead, he chose to close his chapter with grace. While he didn't sign the contract, he did send a letter. Not just declining the Giants' offer, but thanking the team. He said the decision had nothing to do with the trade. In fact, he said it would have been an honor to play for the Giants. So it was classic Jackie, full of dignity and totally on his terms. So I don't need to tell the group where we're headed right now. You've seen these images before, and I'm guessing some of you can already hear Russ Hodges in your head. So let's take a minute and walk through how we got to that call. It's October 3rd, 1951, a date that still rings in every Giants fan's memory. It was a deciding game of a best-of-3 playoff for the National League pennant. The Giants were down 4-1 in the bottom of the ninth. And in the middle of all that tension, in the stands, was Margaret Feeney. She was Chubb's wife and Katie's mom, tracking every pitch with her scorecard. It's a Dodger scorecard, actually. So let's zoom in a little closer here. Sometimes History reveals itself in just the smallest details. This is where her emotion really shows through. At some point during the game, as the tension was building, Margaret started scribbling her infant son's names, Charles Stonemfini, all across the page. I mean, we all know that feeling when our nerves just need something to do. Margaret found hers scribbling her son's name and initials over and over again. It's the kind of thing you do when you're holding your breath and hoping something good is about to happen. And yes, for anyone who's been more tuned into their phone than this conversation, we are, of course, talking about the shot heard around the world. It's still one of the most unforgettable moments in baseball history. And to this day, we still don't know why Margaret was using a Dodger scorecard at the Polo Grounds. But honestly, that little detail just kind of makes the whole thing even more memorable. These are two things both connected to the Dodgers in very different ways. One that didn't happen and one we'll never stop talking about. But that's baseball. Now, if we could move on from one fan's handwritten scorecard to another, this one belonging to someone who became an essential voice for the Giants baseball. And many of you will know him by name and probably by byline too. Before diving into the next two pieces of memorabilia, I wanted to spend a moment with the man who brought them together, one of our former beloved beat writers, Nick Peters. Nick's journey with the Giants started long before he ever filed a story. On opening day in 1958, the team's very first game in San Francisco, a 19-year-old fan named Nick sat in the stands. He kept score that day, gathered autographs on the program, and soaked in every moment. It was the kind of day that stayed with him for life. Nick would go on to cover the Giants as a beat writer for nearly 50 years, writing for the San Francisco Chronicle, Oakland Tribune, and the Sacramento Bee, among others. And if you have any Giants books at home, chances are he wrote one of them. His reporting was sharp, fair, and full of heart. But more than that, Nick never lost the perspective of a fan, someone who felt the highs and lows right alongside all of us. In 2009, Nick received the J.G. Taylor Spink Award from the Baseball Writers Association of America. It's one of the highest honors in his field. That award is presented at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, where Nick's name is now permanently enshrined amongst the game's most respected voices. And even after Nick passed away in 2015, his story stayed with the team. His wife, Lise, who knew exactly what the Giants meant to him, donated many pieces of his personal collection to us. That includes the two items we're about to see next. His scorecard from that game in 1958 and a lineup card from a game that nearly became San Francisco's last. Each one tells a story and in their own way marks a turning point. So as we were saying, Nick's journey with the Giants began as a fan, the day Major League Baseball arrived in San Francisco. This is a game and a story you all know by heart. And honestly, some of you could probably tell it better than I can, especially since some of you might have been there. On the right side of the screen, you'll see the scorecard that Nick held in his hands that day. Every play is marked in his exact, careful handwriting, the kind of attention only a true baseball fan gives to a scorecard. And on the left is the cover, signed by a whole host of Giants from that 1958 team. And right there in the mix is one name that might stand out, Gino Cimoli. As you probably know, he was with the Dodgers and led off the game, becoming the very first major leaguer to bat on the West Coast. And we can assume that's why Nick asked him to sign the cover, but we'll never know for sure. The scorecard is more than a souvenir. It's a fan's memory, carefully preserved from a day that changed Giants history forever.
Hey, Missy?
Yes.
You know Somoli was a mailman in San Francisco in the Marina District?
Are you serious?
He was a native San Franciscan.
Yes, he was a mailman, and I ran into him when I was a kid. And he was retired. He was a mailman in San Francisco in the Marina District. How's that? Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's
Nick,
amazing.
anytime, Rick.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. There's your wow.
That's
But
a
I
wow.
knew he was a native San Franciscan. That's why he batted leadoff for that game.
Wow. You just blew my mind, Rick. Again. Let's see, what do we have? Let's see what's up next.
Oh,
So now let's fast forward to a moment that looked like it might be our last.
Oh,
It was
man.
the last game of the 1992 season, and I'm sure all of you, even Rick, remembers how uncertain everything felt at the time. The deal to move the team to Tampa Bay was nearly finalized. It wasn't just talk, it was real. We were moving. Before the game, Roger Craig had gathered his players together and told them what no one wanted to hear, that this might be the last time they'd wear San Francisco across their jerseys. Luckily for us and for history, Nick was there reporting on the game. He made sure to save the lineup card, knowing exactly what it meant to history. And I mean, as you can see, it's signed by Bob Lurie, Al Rosen, and Roger Craig, three men who were right in the middle of one of the hardest moments in Giants history. Thankfully, as we all know, that's not where the story ended. Peter McGowan, who we were all talking about a little while ago, led the local group that stepped in and kept the team in San Francisco. A few months later, the 1993 season began with the Giants still calling San Francisco home. So this card doesn't just mark a lineup, it marks how close San Francisco came to losing the team and the fact that we didn't. So while we're thinking about history through the eyes of adults, let's take a step back and see Giants history through the eyes of a child. Not a journalist, not a ball player, just a 12-year-old boy with a lot of nerve. What he ended up with was a ball that tells a story, and the Giants are lucky to have it. Bob Keeve had a deep love for baseball and an equally deep sense of civic duty. Over the years, he wrote speeches for President Eisenhower and went on to build a long, successful career in radio. But that's not the part of his story we're talking about today. This goes back to 1933. Bob was 12 years old, living in New York, and he loved baseball, especially the Giants. And like a lot of kids at the time, he brought a ball and pen to the ballpark, hoping to get a few autographs. But what he came home with was something else entirely. His ball came home covered in signatures, and not just anyone's signature. He got them one by one, just hanging around the dugouts, waiting for his chance, and asking future Hall of Famers like Mel Ott and Bill Terry to sign his ball. And as long as he was there, he also asked a few Yankees too, including Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Bob didn't have any special access. He was just a kid with a ball and a pen, doing what he could to get close to the players he admired. And here's why this ball mattered so much, not just to the Giants, but to history and Bob personally. He held on to this ball his entire life. And a few years before he passed away in 2020, he donated it to the Giants. He didn't give it to us as a collector or for the attention. Bob just wanted to make sure it ended up with people who would cherish it and keep the memory of the great players alive. If you read his words here, you can feel how much it meant to him, not just the ball, but the whole experience. And scrambling for the ball during batting practice, getting each autograph himself, his parents letting him ride the subway to the polo grounds, all on his own. That kind of story sticks with you because it's not just about the names on the ball. It's about the fact that Bob asked, and even the Hall of Famers said yes. So now, don't mind, we can switch gears again to something small, but incredibly telling about Giants history. It's not a jersey or a contract, it's just a pin. But I have to say, this is one of my favorite stories in our whole collection. In fact, I loved it so much, I actually built an entire exhibition around it a few years ago. Not just the pin itself, but the idea behind it. How even the smallest detail on a single object can tell a much bigger story. And that's exactly what this pin does. So This is the press pin from the 2002 World Series. Now, I know the ending of that series still stings a little for all of us, so we won't dwell on that. But this pin has a second story that I just love. As many of you know, World Series pins used to have the year as part of their designs, but teams had to prepare their press pins way in advance, long before we knew if we were actually going to make it to the World Series. And this created a lot of phantom pins. Basically, pins that were made for a moment that never came. And I'm guessing a few of you probably have a phantom pin or two in your collections. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you look closely at this pin, on the one we handed out during our 2002 World Series, you'll notice something odd. While it doesn't have a date on it, it does have the wrong Giants logo. It's the logo from 1993. That's because this pin was actually designed for the 1993 postseason. And that year, as you know, we won 103 games, and it was an unbelievable season. But as we all remember, we didn't make it to the playoffs. There wasn't a wild card yet, and we lost the division on the last day. It was brutal for all of us.
It's all in Torres.
Exactly. So these pins, they just sat in a box unused. And fast forward to 2002, and we finally made it. And just like that, these little 1993 ghosts found their moment in the sun. And that's why I love this piece. It connects two totally different eras, one that broke our hearts and one that gave us hope again. And it reminds us that even the tiniest object can carry a whole decade's worth of emotion. And honestly, I guess that's why we tell these stories, because nothing in a collection is ever just what it looks like on the surface. And then from a tiny object with big significance, we'll move on to one of our final pieces. And it's one that captures bravery and resilience unlike anything else in our collection, and is all in one piece of fabric. As you can see, it's Dave Draveki's final jersey. Many of you already know his story, but just in case you haven't heard it for a while, Dave was a pitcher for the Giants in the late 1980s. And in 1988, doctors discovered a cancerous tumor in his pitching arm. He then underwent surgery that removed part of the deltoid muscle from his shoulder. Most people, including his doctors, believed he'd never pitch again. But of course, Dave believed differently. So Dave came back. After everything, the surgery, the rehab, he got back on the mound. That was in August of 1989. And for a little while, it looked like his story was going to have a magical ending. But just a few days later, when he was pitching in Montreal, his arm broke in mid-pitch. Roger Craig, who was our manager at the time, said later, "I could hear that thing crack from the dugout." Will Clark described the scene as he rushed over to Dave, saying, "I was the first person to him. It wasn't a good scene. All I kept telling him was, Dave, Dave, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. They're coming, buddy. They're coming." The medics did come, and they carried Dave off on a stretcher, and his baseball career was over. And the jersey he was wearing that day, they had to cut it off him. After that, his jersey was one of the many things he packed away into his travel bag and put into the back of his closet, and it stayed there for years. Eventually, Dave donated his whole bag to the Giants. Jersey, glove, shoes, undershirt, all of it. For me, this jersey tells a story that goes way beyond baseball. It's about what it means to keep going, even when your world collapses around you. And for Dave, it became part of something more. After baseball, he became a motivational speaker, using his story to offer hope to people who are facing their own struggles. So for us, it's not just a jersey. It's a symbol of what it means to be a Giant in every sense of the word. And after that, I actually thought we could use a little bit of a breather here. So let's end with something a little bit lighter. This slide really doesn't need much from me. You can probably just take a look and let it take you back. 10-cent sodas, $1 for $1. And yes, you could buy a t-shirt for $2. if you ever went to a game with a pocket full of change, this one's for you. It's just one more reminder that baseball's always been about more than the score. It's about what you carried home with you. Whether it was a balsa wood glider, which honestly just seems like a very bad idea to me to sell to people in the stands, um, or it could be, the memory of a hot dog on a rainbow roll. So that's just my little time capsule for today. Some old papers, some soda prices, and hopefully a few surprises. Thank you for letting me share some of these stories. And if anything sparked a memory or there's something you've been holding on to, question a story, I'd really love to hear it. And if not, I'll just assume that you're all just stunned by the price of a cushion rental. Because it surprised me.
Missy, how could you say you couldn't follow up people? I mean, you hit it out of the park. That was just a
Oh,
wonderful presentation, and I think it hit home with a lot of people here of seeing some stuff that they had never seen before. So thank you.
okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
I'll lead it off. First of all, on a personal note, where did your love of history come from?
That's a great I've always just really loved history. I love the fact that there can be everything is known. Everything that happened. It happened, this is the way it happened, but there's still so many different ways that you can look at it. I think for me, like John Shea sort of epitomized this with his last book on Willie Mays, that, there have been hundreds of books written about Willie, if not more. And he was able to find a new way to present Willie and present new information. And that's what I love about history, that everybody has their own perspective of it, and you can bring so much more into it just by looking at it a little differently.
Yeah, I was there last year at the club level, and your displays were, just fabulous. They really
Oh,
Eddie
thank you.
Grant and Christy Mathewson, those were great. I got two other quick points. I'm sure Rick helped with it, but the Giants Vault, did you have anything to do with that exhibition?
Yeah, yeah. I was the one who put everything together for that. That was a lot of fun. For people who don't know, the vault was an area on the field club level that we had for a couple of years, where we were able to do really sort of focused exhibitions. We did one on 1958, 1957 and 58, so the move to San Francisco, that we did in 2008 to 2018, sorry. And then in 2019, we did another one about the 30th anniversary of the earthquake. Um, Unfortunately, that is one of the things that we can blame on COVID for losing. The vault was right next door, it still is, to the visitors clubhouse. And with COVID and social distancing, they needed the space. So that is what unfortunately happened to the vault, which is still a little heartbreaking for me. Luckily, before COVID happened, we were able we pretty much had that display together, which was all on the World Series winning managers. But right outside the vault is a hallway that we were able to update that now showcases each of our World Series championships. And if you come to the ballpark on a tour, you can still see that area.
Right. And my last question is, in 2004, Steve and I went out there to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the 1954 last championship in New York. On the field were those iconic letters that said New York Giants that were attached to the Polo Grounds. The Giants can't use that somewhere on the stadium?
We actually had that in the vault.
Yes.
So that was in the vault. And we were still trying to find a new home for them. The main problem is their condition. I mean, since they were outside, for years in New York, And even when they came here, they weren't exactly put in great preservation spaces, phrase it that way.
Right.
So, they're very rusty and not all that stable. So it's not something that we can have down at fan level, unfortunately, it has to be up high. And then you still get into the problem with the atmosphere being right next to the salty water where we are now. So we are still trying to find a home for them. Would love for them to go somewhere. They are so amazing.
They really are. And so many of the people, not me, so many people went to the Polo Grounds, and that sign, the letters are iconic. So thank you, Missy. Mars, you're up.
Oh, thank you, Missy. We're both in the same occupation. You being the official archivist and me being an unofficial archivist in the field of jazz for nearly 6 generations. I've been photographing many of the jazz greats that appeared in Downbeat, Jazz Times, Jazz Is, Jazz Now program guides.
Oh,
So
wow.
whenever somebody passes away, I contribute a photograph I might have taken like 50 years ago of a famous jazz musician, of recently 99-year-old Roy Haynes, who died in November. And he goes back to playing with Charlie Parker. So we have, similarities in our occupation. Next thing I'd like to tell you, I'm one of my granddaughter is one of 6 generations of Giant fans. The next thing I like to mention is the photo archives that when they broke ground in 1997, I worked at 385 3rd Street on my lunch hour. I would take my tripod and my Rolleiflex twin lens reflex medium format camera with the Zeiss lenses, and I photographed every stage of the building of the ballpark, which I like to resend to you because at the time I didn't know who to send it to and who was taking care of that. So if you at the end of this conversation, maybe you could provide where I can send it to. The other thing I'd like to mention is turn back the clock. You show the New York uniforms of the early 20th century or late 19th century uniforms. I'm wondering what they used to have it a turn back the clock day. And the last thing I'd like to mention is I've been on. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I've been on a vociferous campaign for Willie Mays Field at Oracle Park. So if you can elaborate on those issues, I'd be grateful.
Sure. Well, I agree. I think, that having Willie Mays Field at Oracle Park would be great. I think that would, be a good tribute to him. Luckily, we do have, the Willie Mays Gate, which is the main gate into the park. So, no matter what, his legacy will never be forgotten. And his, fantastic statue, which just sort of anchors everything, even with the other statues that we have around the park. I still hear more, let's meet at the Willie Mays statue, a lot more than you hear, let's meet at the Juan Marichal statue. So I think anything that we can do for Willie is fantastic. And I'm really thrilled with everything that we have been able to do already. Let's see, for the
Turn back the clock.
turn back the clock, yeah. So we used to have all the jerseys around the ballpark. That was one of the things that Peter really wanted. And I think there still are a few around that stretch back to, I believe their 42 jersey was the first one. Everything that we had out was replicas. I'll just say that now. We're not putting out, a real 42 jersey in the salt air or anything like that. So, the jerseys are really important to us, to our history. It's, interesting. Even our current City Connect jersey, has the purple or violet in it, just like our jersey used to. I'm not gonna remember the year, maybe Russ remembers the year. that we had that. But at one point in time when we were in New York, we had violet on our jersey. McGraw wanted to do a sort of an ode to New York University. So that's why we were purple there. And just there's so many things that we can do with the jerseys. I know that, even when we do the sort of the tribute to the Negro Leagues and we bring back, it's not our jersey, but the jersey from, the oh my God, I'm drawing a blank right now with their names. The San Francisco,
Seals?
Yeah.
not Seals, the ones with the
Sea
bear
lions.
cubs. Sea Lions, thank you.
Yeah.
With the bear cubs on it. So I think just across baseball, there is sort of the desire to still keep its history alive in small ways and in larger ways. And for the photos, would love that. We'll definitely get together with you and really appreciate your offer. That is
Well,
wonderful.
all I need is where to send I'd have to bring you the album because they're all film photographs that I didn't put on my computer digitally. I'd have to actually bring down the album or scan all the photographs to as attachments, and all I need is where to send them to because back when they broke ground in 1997, I photographed actually Peter McGowan and Larry Baer at the groundbreaking ceremony, and then because I bought a charter seat license, and my name and my former partner, who passed away, our names are in the brick at the Willie Mays Gate. So I didn't know where to send them to back then, and I never heard back whoever I did send them to, and I have them in a photo album somewhere up in the shelves of all my other archives. But I know I could find them, and I'd love to be able to donate them.
Yeah, that would be
We'll
fantastic.
get you the emails and you guys can work that out. How's that?
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Missy.
Max,
thank
you're up,
you.
Max. Go ahead.
I just want to compliment you on the Maze pop-up that you had last year across the street. That was wonderful. And I just left wishing that there was some sort of permanent exhibit somewhere in the ballpark that you could find some space or whatnot. Given the history of the Giants, there's so much, but just the things you showed, in this presentation. It's great to be able to see them, other than like on the club level where you have it, the nice displays there. So, just a big wish on my end.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, honestly, I agree with you 100%. We're still working on trying to find some place that we can do that. One of the main problems, as I'm sure everybody knows, that we're on such a small piece of property that before we built this ballpark, the smallest park was on 16 acres, and we're actually on 13. So it all kind of comes down to space. But I really appreciate, your thought of, that it's some sort of museum or exhibition space would be nice to have, and I couldn't agree more. And hopefully we'll be able to find a space and we can do that.
Thank you, Max. Tom O'Doul, you're up. Tom, talk. Nothing's coming out again, Tom.
Where is he?
He's there. Tom, just keep talking at some point and we'll get you back on. Bill Klink, you're up.
Missy, thank you. I've been looking forward to this for a number of days and even weeks now when I found this was on the schedule. I'm like a number of us who are quite a ways from San Francisco. I live in Arizona. I don't travel very much, and many of us don't. That having been said, my question is one, is there any way you can, at least for the YouTube that Gary has control over, can you do a pictorial kind of a walkthrough or run through that can be posted on what you do have that we can view if for those of us who can't make it up there? I know it's not quite a museum yet, but I'd love to see what you have, and then I have a comment about something when you're done with that.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I don't see why we couldn't. I assume you're talking about like on the club level, the displays that we have and stuff like
Correct.
that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually a fantastic idea. I hadn't even thought about that. As long as Gary's on board, we can
I'm always
definitely
on
do.
board, Missy. If you send a YouTube video, I will post it on our channel.
I'm listening to
Everybody
Missy
would be
in a
able to see
wonderful
it.
presentation about
Okay.
Giants history. She is just so classy.
Who's
Um,
talking?
I don't.
I don't know
so
who's talking.
Mhm.
Missy, I guess I'll interrupt that person. The comment that I had was this. Gary knows, and I know Norm and a few others know. I've got about 8 thick binders of letters, unique photos, a raft of stuff about the Giants. With your permission, if Gary could forward on to me both your email and your cell phone, I'd like to photograph about 10 or 12 of them, not for the purposes of your looking at them, but for my gifting them to you, to the Giants. The majority of the binders are going to the Institute for Baseball Studies at Whittier College. And you may know Joe Price down there. He's getting, every year, he gets more and more of my collection. But I'd like to take the best of the Giant stuff and not give it to him. And you judge what I'll send you. I can describe it to you. A lot of it has to do with Mays, including the Trenton year, that's not out there anywhere. The original signing letter from Jack Schwartz explaining in 3 pages how the signing actually occurred. Marichel's final photo before he ran out onto the field to pitch his no-hitter. It was camera day. My mother took the last photo.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's stuff like that. If you might, through Gary, pass on to me your email and also your cell phone so I can text it to you, because I can't send it by email, and I'll be glad to donate it. And I guess a final question. I think I know the answer, but I ask it of everybody that I do this with. You aren't a 501c3, are you?
To your last one, no, we are
No.
not,
That's
unfortunately.
okay. That works well with Institute, but it won't here. I'd still like to get that material over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Okay.
Bill.
Yes, well, thank you. It's very generous of you.
Gary, I
really
hate to interrupt. Can you
appreciate
hear me now?
Everything is going away in 5 years.
Tom,
Everything.
is that you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom, you're up.
Okay. Okay. You guys, you okay?
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead.
Let me congratulate Missy on a great presentation. You
Thank
you
you.
really got me choked up with Jay Trevecki. But I have one little question or favor to ask of you. After Lefty O'Doul was inducted into the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame, the Japanese brought the plaque that's up on the club level and had a presentation on the field. And I'm working with John Leondakis on the documentary film on Lefty O'Doul, and we don't have any pictures or video from that occasion. And I'm sure the Giants have some somewhere. If you can help us out on that, I'd really appreciate it. I think I could probably get a hold of you through an email address at the ballpark, or maybe Russ Stanley can give me a little hand on that too. But if you have anything on that event, it'd be terrific. And congratulations again on the job you're doing. I always visit the club level when I get up there, and it's spectacular. So, congratulations and a great job. And today you were really fun. Thank you. Bye bye.
And Tom,
Great.
way to use that phone to talk, because I don't know what's wrong with the computer you use.
I don't either. My
But this worked
computer's
good.
old.
It worked good. Charles, you're up.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted just to say it's Missy. It's nice to put a name with the email address. I'm the person I will be when I depart. I'm not planning on going anytime soon, but you'll be getting my 1922 New York Giants World Series ring.
Thank you so much, sir.
And I'm looking forward to that. Not going, but I'm looking forward to the Giants getting the ring.
Well, let's hope it's a long time in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. Some of these games, though, I think they're going to shorten my life.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Charles. And
Yeah.
just back
But,
from the stadium, Norm
Great
Coleman.
presentation, too.
Hey,
Norm, you're up.
all right, Missy, thank you so much for your presentation. It was great. And you inspired me for three things here. One is I want to offer you something, I want to tell you a story, and then I want to ask you a question. I don't have things like World Series rings or like what Bill Klink has, but I was at the last game in 1992, and I had a press pass that day, and I took pictures after the game. I don't know if you can see them on here, but I got pictures of them digging out the home plate and the pitcher's mound, which might come in handy in terms of just any displays you're doing. I've got other pictures, including the picture in the dugout, me in the dugout when everyone was gone. Ballpark is empty. And then when they said others, they said the ball, we have to leave now. And there's a fan, and that fan is me crying, leaving the ballpark. So you touched me about that. And if you want any of these pictures, I'll be glad to send them to you. As far as the story goes, you touched me in that area also with Nick Peters. I love Nick Peters, and I saw him one day in the tunnel at the ballpark and asked him for an autograph. And he said he can't write. And he has a stamp he usually has with him, and he didn't have the stamp with him. And so he said, give me your address. I gave him my address, and a week later, the stamped autograph came in the mail. That's the kind of guy he was. And so I thought I'd share that with you. And now, in terms of those letters, the New York letters, I'm wondering, could they be put in plexiglass and put outside? And I asked that for a reason. And that's because, you know, where the vault was by the left field dual gate, if you go to the left of the vault, there's this big empty wall that has the Eddie Grant plaque on it, and it has a left field dual cameo on it with a little plaque with an inscription. That would be a great place for a New York Giants wall, since you already have two New York Giants on the wall. And if you even wanted to go a little bit further, you could potentially put up some plaques for some New York Giant Hall of Famers, and have a new area that's a dead area in the ballpark right now. But if you have a few things on the wall, maybe people come in the left field dual gate, they'll want to come over and look at the plaques and the letters.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea for the plaques. Unfortunately, that area isn't big enough for the letters.
Oh, okay.
They're too long. I love the idea though for the plaques and sort of doing something to say liven it up, I guess is one way to phrase it. And I think, you know, because there isn't too much there, that the plaques that are there, they sort of, you know, get lost in the shuffle. And I think that's a really good idea to put some more things there to.
Okay. You know what? There very well might be enough room there for plaques and a Christy Mathewson statue.
There's always room for Christy Mathewson statue. That I can tell you right off the bat. I mean, we'll knock down other people if we can put Christy up somewhere.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Missy.
Missy,
Yes,
I
thank you.
don't know if you know this about Norm, which is right up your alley. Norm has every autograph of every Giant who's ever played in San Francisco in a game.
That's impressive.
And the managers and coaches and the owners. Because, Missy, we met before, and I told you I didn't have Bud Herseth.
Yeah.
I talked to his daughter, and she said they didn't have anything, but she asked me to send her the envelope anyway. 2 years later, she sent me an autograph.
Oh,
so I have Bud Herseth now also.
And before I turn it over to Larry, Missy, one thing I meant to ask, I didn't want to hog at the beginning. You know, since you're a historian, you're an educator also. Don't you think that Hall of Fame wall that the Giants have, don't you think it should be a franchise wall where they include the greats of the New York Giants so that kids can read about these people instead of seeing Carl Hubbell's retired number, they could read the plaque outside about what he actually did. I don't think there's plenty of room on that wall. It's just all, you know, down King Street, is it? I'm sorry, I don't live out there. So
and Mellot and Bill Terry.
But you know, you don't have to pick it. All the Hall of Famers who were great Giants. Why not have a plaque out there next to the San Francisco? Make it a franchise wall. That's just my opinion.
I agree. And Mel Ott and Bill Terry as well. The last National Leaguer to bat 400.
Thank you, Morris. Larry, you were up.
Missy, really extraordinary. And if I will echo what Gary was just saying about Norm, I had the privilege of meeting Norm in person last Saturday and getting a bit of a tour of his amazing archive. And Missy, I'll say that Norm is a great storyteller as well. And I know how much you
got to go to his condo. It's a must. He's got a real museum.
So my question is kind of related. I'm really curious about, as you do, bringing history to life. And, how does it work, the interaction between you and the docents? I wish Russ were still on this call, unless he is somewhere.
He is.
Working. Oh, yeah? I would love to hear maybe some comments between you and Russ, how that all works, and is there a game plan to bring history to life even more?
Well, I'll speak, then I'll let Russ go.
You're more connected to this idea, so
yeah, but you're one of the cheerleaders, Russ, which is very appreciated. So that's important too. I think it's something that we're always kind of looking at and trying to figure out how to do. And we don't want to just, say, hey, here's XYZ. We want to make it, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to say this the right way, but interesting for somebody to walk up to. Because, even me, if there's just something there, it's just sitting there without any real history behind it, then who cares? Even like, I'm just going to, 1960 program. Okay, it's a 1960 program. Nice. What's the difference?
What's the
But
story?
when you can sort of bring the info, it was the first year at Candlestick. You can bring a whole bunch more information into it, just to sort of, to draw people in, and you can even sort of juxtapose. You have that opposite of our program from the year 2000, so that that's something that even younger people can relate to a little bit more, and then sort of brings them into 1960 through the year 2000. So I think that's something that we're always kind of trying to do, and hopefully moving forward we can grow and do that even more around the ballpark, and wherever else we can figure out how to do it.
I think Missy's biggest challenge is finding space in this building. Everything's becoming a premium seat, all you can eat area. And there's some big projects that we're looking at that could give us some small pockets that maybe we can do something, but to do a major museum, if you will, we just don't have the space here. And we've been challenging. Rick's been trying to help us on some things, and Missy's challenge. What I love about Missy, look, you guys you're preaching to the choir when you tell Missy you want Mel Ott on the wall. I mean, she would put up a plaque of every New York Giant. She'd put up a statue of every one of them. I think we both would. We're both big fans of the Giants' history, but I mean, just some of the stuff today. I mean, he tugged at our heartstrings with pictures of Katie, the Dravecky jersey. I mean, that was incredible. And then the story of the 2002. I like to think I know a lot about Giants history, and the story that was the '93 press pin that we basically just packed up when we got eliminated and rolled it out in '02. I never knew that. I mean, that's great stuff.
Really? Wow. Well, actually, I was more excited because after when I started with the team in '94, and somehow I sort of inherited all the pins, all the boxes. When we got there in 2002, I was more excited to get rid of those boxes than anything else. not realizing that then I was just going to get more boxes for when we ever got to the next one. But yeah, I'm surprised you didn't know that, Russ. That's awesome.
Oh, and that's a pretty simple one. I should have known that.
Well, the
Thanks.
logos they're so similar. Then unless
Yeah, I
you're
can't
really
believe
sort of
Mario
looking
let you
at it.
do that. I was surprised.
1.1.2.
Blame Mario. I like it.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Larry. Mark West, you're up.
Yeah, my name's Mark West. I wrote the song Ballad of John McGraw, and so I'm going to be involved in the marker dedication in Truxton, New York at the field.
Great.
But my background is in sound and lighting, and I toured as a rock and roll roadie, and I toured with the Christian band Petra, and we played in Youngstown, Ohio, Dave Dravecki's hometown. And the night before the concert, he had catering and a dinner for us in a room in a hotel, and then he came to the show the next night. So I met him then, and I think that was about 1988 or 89. I think he still had his left arm then. And then in 1995, we did sound for this Southwest Christian Sports Spectacular in the football stadium here in Springfield, Missouri. And Dave was the featured speaker at that. And I think at that, he didn't have his left arm then, had been amputated, but great guy, great guy. He's got a book too. Anyway, that was my encounter with Dave Dravecki, and I just wanted to chime in about that. And Missy, say hi to Jean Fruth for me. She's a photographer, I believe, out there. And I met her when she came through Springfield, Missouri.
Okay, yeah, she's an amazing photographer, and I really love her series on women in baseball. And I mean, she's amazing. And I'm thrilled that you got to meet Dave and talk with him and just sort of feel the love that emanates from him, because after you meet him once, you're never going to forget. He's such a special human being.
Thank you, Mark. Steve, what are you showing us?
That's her book. That's her most recent book.
Okay, there you go.
Whose book?
Yeah.
Jean Fruth.
Oh, okay.
Gary?
Grassroots baseball.
I'm sorry?
See her, be her. About women in baseball.
Ted, is that you talking?
That is me.
I will put you on the list, okay, Ted? Ted, I'll put you on the list. We got Brian, Renee, and then Ted. Missy, are you okay with time for 3 more?
Sure.
Wonderful. Brian, you are up.
Well, first of all, I really want to thank you for your presentation. I think history is extraordinarily important. And, one part of my thanks would also go to the Giants for having a position like yours. One of the things that kind of concerns me about Major League Baseball's emphasis on, building the next generation of fans and all of that is sometimes I sort of feel like they're kind of leaving history almost in the dustbin, that in many respects. And one of the things I really enjoyed about your presentation and about the Giants in particular has been their glorious history. And I'm wondering, do other teams also have historians and archivists to kind of keep that alive, that you're aware of?
Some teams do. Unfortunately, not every team, they don't. But there are some that do. And like you're saying, it's mostly the teams that have a longer history to them. Like obviously the Yankees do, with all their amazing history. The Dodgers do, the Braves do. I wish, the Reds do. I wish that every team did, because I think that the more that you know and appreciate the history, you're going to appreciate more what's going on now. It doesn't mean as much. And we were talking earlier about, Bill Terry being the last 400 hitter. Well, what does that mean? That means that since Bill Terry did it, no one else has, which is amazing. Someone is going to do that eventually. They, knock on wood, it'll be a Giant player that does it. but I think you appreciate it. You appreciate what's happening more now if you know the history. Matt Cain's perfect game meant more because it never happened before for us. So just, with all the amazing pitchers that we've had, in San Francisco and New York, none of them did that. None of them ever did that. But then Matt Cain did, on just a random weeknight, with just fans, sitting there in the stands who loved baseball. So I agree completely that, we should focus more on the history. And I think if it's framed correctly, even the 16-year-old kids are going to appreciate it, and they'll end up appreciating what they're seeing more currently.
I think that last point you made is really important because for me, as maybe for most of the rest of us here, and for many other people I know, it's baseball is very much, a grandfather to father to son to your child to your grandchild, kind of passing that down. That's to me what's keeping this game so vibrant and kind of alive as a daily presence, at least in my life. So thanks very much for keeping it going.
Thank you, Brian.
Out there in San Francisco.
Before we go to Renee, Steve, could you, some people don't read the chat. Can you read what you just wrote, Steve?
Oh, well, I said the month of May was great, but what a way to get back on track. And thank you, Missy. Gary, your timing is almost good as Laughing Boy or Beach Boy. We'll come up with that later on, but no, your timing is great. This was what a way to get back, to where we want to be. And thank you, Missy, for all you've been doing. Wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you.
Renee, you're up.
Missy, thank you. I had questions and they were all asked and you answered them beautifully. One thing that obviously about this group is been there, done that, they've seen it. Stories, love the stories, and your presentation with those artifacts and those stories just add to this glorious group and what we're doing, and the love of history, of course. So my only thing that I could tell you is I'd love to have you back. I wish you come back because I want to see more. I want to hear more. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you. Work with Gary on that. See if he'll let me back.
Absolutely. I think Ted, you were going to wrap it up for us.
Well, I was going to ask why there is no historical significance mentioned about Leo coming out to the Giants. That was a big deal.
That was a huge deal. I'm actually a bit surprised that no one has mentioned that just in the last month with you. I mean, one of the most heartfelt things to me about him was just that he had Willie Mays room with his son. And to me that just that speaks more to who he was and how he managed than anything else. All the bluster of just this crazy guy who's just going all out all the time, that he's able to sort of step back and really help Willie in a subtle way get used to the United States in the 1950s, as a young Black man and player, and letting Willie have the experience of a family, Leo's family, when Willie's family was so far away. And I think just that trust that Leo showed him, and just the connection that created, I honestly believe, and obviously there's no way of proving one way or the other, but if it wasn't for Leo DeRocher, Willie Mays wouldn't have been Willie Mays. That he needed just that sense of family, that sense of belonging, and the sense of being cherished himself as Chris cherished him. And I think that, Leo in general isn't thought of enough within the Giants. So I agree with you on that he was very important at the time and moving forward.
Thank you, because that was such an important happening, and it meant so much, as you said, to Willie and to Giant fans. And he was an icon for the wrong team, but eventually for the right team.
Thank you, Ted. And I will leave with one last thing, Missy. If you ever come to New York, there's a guy here named Peter Laskowicz. He leads incredible tours of the Polo Ground areas where you might know so much. He knows everything about where the Giants played and why they played there, and Willie Mays' apartment and this and that. So it'd be, if you ever come, he's on board tonight. He's a great tour. Peter, you want to say something before we leave?
Yes, thank you. You mentioned Leo DeRocher's connection with Willie Mays. Part of what makes Leo DeRocher so important to Giant history is that, in the words of another baseball executive, there was nobody who could, forgive my language, nobody who could shove a blowtorch up your ass like Leo DeRocher. And if anybody other than Leo DeRocher was managing Willie Mays, he would have taken a lot of hell that he didn't take because DeRocher was there.
Thank you, Peter.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right, let's all give it up for Missy. Missy, unbelievable, fantastic. Please come back again, and please come on some of our Zooms just to be, one of us, if you know what I mean.
Can I just say one thing, or are you gonna?
Go ahead, Steve.
You're gone. Missy, I also agree with the fact that if DeRocher wouldn't have been suspended, Jackie Robinson wouldn't have faced all the problems that he did. I still speak to Leo's son, Chris, who lives in Utah. He's not doing too well. I was actually at Cooperstown when Leo DeRocher was inducted. I don't know if anybody else was there. And it was an interesting thing because Chris DeRocher received the plaque and he couldn't get through the speech. He started crying, and luckily Lorraine Day was sitting right there. She came and she grabbed the microphone. There was a daughter also that was adopted. She passed away a bunch of years ago. Chris is he's battling Parkinson's. He's got a daughter in Las Vegas. He's got a long, sad story. But I still speak to him from time to time. And Leo DeRocher, well, they waited like they waiting with Rose. They waited to put him in the hall till he died.
Right.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Gary.
Let's all give it up for Missy.
Willie
Missy,
Mays,
again,
always called.
thank you
Leo
so much.
DeRocher, Mr. Leo.
And
Thank you.
we will reconvene on Monday, this coming Monday, with John Hussman. So please, I will send out the invites, and we will have a great evening on Monday night. So until then, have a great weekend, everybody, and we will hang around, talk Giant baseball.
Let's go, Giants.
Be well, everybody.
Thank you.